kid and, the last day of school. It feels about the same. So let me get started. There's been a lot of action on the bills we've been watching. Many have passed, some have not. The report's going to look a little different to you this week, as I've taken off the companion bills where they were laid on the table, and the other bill was taken up. So you only see each bill once, except for a couple at the end. So our bill 619, as I reported last week, that has passed, and it will be sent to the governor for his signature. That's the CEI sovereign immunity bill. 287 was the transportation bill. That one, we got the language. There's some language in there about the liability that gives both contractors and the design engineer immunity in certain situations. That still has to be, you still have to have a judge rule that you have immunity. So most people think it really doesn't do that much, as a judge can already do that. Anyway, so once we get that fixed, we weren't necessarily supporting or opposing the bill, but we've left it on there. But that has passed. That'll go to the governor. The continuing contracts bill passed, going to the governor. That moves the 4 million threshold for construction under continuing contracts to 7.5 million. Puts an index on it so that it'll go up a little bit each year according to CPI. Another one that's passed, the alternative mobility funding systems. They limit impact fees to some extent, but then provide for other methods of funding. Laura, go. The interstate mobility bill passed a couple of days ago, or 4 days ago. What that does is that's the one that the Board of Professional Engineers wasn't too happy with, because when they deny an applicant from out of state for not meeting our requirements, then there's language in there that it will now, the person can appeal that decision to the Secretary of DBPR. They would have 7 days to request that review by the Secretary, and then the Secretary would have 7 days to act on it. My understanding on that is it's very rare for that to happen, as most of the states have very similar requirements to what we have. An exception would be California, where you have to have a college degree to sit for the PE exam, but the degree does not have to be in engineering, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that can be a basis for a denial. But the process basically remains the same. That somebody applies, if they're going to deny it, they issue an intent to deny. That person is able to edit their application or whatever they need to do to get in position to get the license. If they can't do that, then there's a final denial, and the part that changes would be at that point the person could request the review from the Secretary. And 1301, that was the bill. Derek, you all got your stuff fixed in there, and
that's correct.
We're all good. Okay,
Yes,
that one came out yesterday. So then we have aviation. This is the only one really was I thought might still be in play, but talking to Derek this morning, it is not. That's the vertiport and advanced air mobility bill. It bounced a couple of times back and forth from the House to the Senate. The final version that the Senate sent back to the House, or the House refused to concur, so it went back to the Senate. And I guess that's how it happened, Derek.
That's correct.
Right. And,
that's correct.
And so they're not going to take it back up. Is that correct?
Okay. Correct. That's correct.
So that one's gone. And then here I still have both bills. 472 has been retained on the calendar for a week over in the Senate. It's on the calendar again today, but I don't know that it'll move because the House bill isn't even ready. They never got it through their final committee stop. That was the bill that increased the level of money you could get from $200,000 to $400,000. So that one appears dead. And then the bill that started out abolishing the Transportation Commission never got out of its final committee in the Senate. And probably the last one there, yeah. The House did pass theirs, but again, it's just sitting over in the Senate. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, that's correct. So that one doesn't appear like it's going to pass either. Just to throw in a couple of other things, they'll be doing the budget today. The work program for DOT is $8.25 billion, which is down some. Derek, you kind of threw in another message. They're funding a lot of the trans fund this year, including half of the local transportation projects. Is that where that extra money goes? Usually they're about 11 or 12.
Yeah,
Maybe 13.
They're funding a lot of the local projects from the trust fund, which is not what the administration would have wanted. They typically want you to fund those through general revenue, but they're pulling a good number of those projects out, funding them through that. So that's a large dollar amount coming out of that. And then they have a lot of just several line items that's coming out as well. And so a lot of things are being funded this year through the trust fund, which basically is eating away at that larger amount.
Right. Okay, and then they also add $881 million for moving Florida forward. And so I'll dig into that a little bit after they get everything passed today, and we'll get something out to the Transportation Committee.
Yeah, Alan, that's also I can't remember how it was funded in the past. That's also being funded from the trust fund as well. And that may be norm. I can't remember how they funded it last time.
It was out of general revenue, Derek. So
yeah, but this time, thank you for that.
That puts a major hurting on their traditional work program.
Yep.
For that money for moving Florida forward, plus the member projects, is really going to hurt their 5-year work program.
Yeah, thank you for JW. They're pulling that one also from the trust fund. And I'll tell you, I've had a couple of discussions with the department, and one with the administration, governor's office. I mean, they were making it clear they did not want these things funded from the trust fund. They wanted to keep that as protected as possible. And so that message was delivered to the legislature. And they still chose for the most part to fund these things through the trust fund. But when you go through the budget, and you're really looking at it starting on page 321 of the budget through about 330, you'll see a lot of things listed that are being funded, and it says it's from trust fund. So a lot of things are being pulled away from that.
Derek,
Did anybody?
general question on that? With that budget, the governor doesn't have line item veto on the budget, or does he?
No, he does. I mean, the challenge, like all these local projects that got funded from the trust fund, the governor has line item authority. He can veto every last one of those projects that got funded from the trust fund. The challenge, however, though, is when you do that, that money basically goes back in, kind of just sits there until it's reappropriated the next fiscal year. But he can definitely go in there and veto these items. Now, when you start looking at moving Florida, for example, and I don't foresee him vetoing that, but let's say he did, like you had to basically veto the entirety of that dollar amount. But these local projects, the governor can veto it, and we should expect, my opinion, we should expect him to veto a good number of those just because of how they were funded. They picked several. They picked several that they funded straight out of general revenue, and it's listed that way. But the majority, I would say 2/3 of those projects are funded from the trust fund.
Right.
Well,
But
Derek,
that money would remain. Go ahead.
I think Derek in previous years in his veto letter, he's been pretty consistent in vetoing those local road projects and saying that they're the responsibility of local government. So I'm with
Yep.
you. I think he's going to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. And let me pull up Tom's message here real quick. I've gotten a couple of questions on bills that, I mean, we were tracking them and talking about them up, but I didn't have them on the report because we had never taken a position.
If I may, Derek, the advanced air mobility you're saying is not going to pass this year in the form.
That's correct. So that's correct. So yesterday, Senator Harrell on Wednesday amended her language onto the House version, which was House Bill 981. She amended her version on there and sent it back over. And yesterday, Representative Bankson, who's the House sponsor, brought it up and refused to concur to the Senate amendment. And he kind of gave, explanation as to why. And he concluded by saying, you never get a perfect bill, but he felt like the House's version was much better than the Senate version. That we just live to work it out again next session is what he said. And so in his refusing to concur, you bounce it back to the Senate. And Senator Harrell kind of already made it known that she was not going to accept their version. So the way Bankson left it is that bill was dead for this session.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a couple of others that I've been asked about this morning, and this happens every year, but people are asking, how did we let the stormwater rule get passed? Well, our official position on that was neutral. So we had people that were for it, we had people that were against it. So that would be the answer to that question. And then somebody asked about a bill that affects the local preference programs, and the local preference programs are still available for local governments. It's just that if they're completely funding the project themselves. What the state is now saying is if there is state money involved, then any firm in the state can compete for that project, and you can't have a local preference. And we had discussed that one a long time ago, and I don't know how you would argue against that if there's state money involved, that anybody from the state would be excluded. So, but those are the two that have come in this morning that people are asking about, just in case anybody on the call is wondering. And with that, there's no reason for us to have another call next week, because I think everything in this report's pretty much wrapped up. If there is anything, we'll include it as part of our legislative report, which we'll send out to the membership, and we'll also have posted on our website. Any questions?
Any on the CEI, sovereign immunity, any feedback from the governor's office on that at all yet?
I haven't heard anything, and I don't know that it's on their radar yet. What happens with these things is, they'll send them over in batches here over the next month or so. And I don't know exactly when they're planning on sending it over, but I don't anticipate that there'll be any problem with that from them. If we hear anything, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah,
if the AAM bill is dead, does that mean we need to shift on our conference?
Yeah, that's where I was headed, Andy. I don't know yet. Let's see what the department says next week, because this just happened last night. So
yeah, understand. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, Andy, I think, we'll take a look at it, but I don't know that we would need to pull anything, because like Derek said, it'll come back next year. get past the election and they'll start filing bills again and it'll be back.
I think this year's
I'll also
bill is more-
say, I had a
Go ahead, David.
conversation with the department because we had language on that bill for our airport client, and I had discussions with Lita. She gave indication, I don't want to speak for her, that they felt like they still had some abilities inside the department to do some things in that area. And so I think it'd be important to have a discussion with them before you make any changes to the conference plans. I think because they still may try to do something from within their own authority. I don't know what that looks like though, but she did kind of mention that.
Well,
And
this
that may
bill,
give an
there was-
opportunity for them to put a spin on it that, we on the consultant side need to be aware, and assuming that we are, and I don't know why we wouldn't be, get behind the efforts next year, right, to help it get across the finish line.
Yeah, and there wasn't a whole lot of funding attached to that bill, was there, Derek? Is more direction on preparing policies?
That's correct.
So, I mean, the department, they were just looking for a blessing, if you will, to move forward with developing statewide policies for advanced air mobility. And I suspect they're going to continue to move forward with that effort. But there wasn't a lot of money associated with that contained in that specific bill, correct?
That's correct as well.
So it may not change a whole lot, Andy. They'll just do it behind the scenes and then get the legislative blessing. By that time, they may have the reports pretty much finished, and they might incorporate them into the revised legislation, or they might have the policies, further along and incorporate that into the legislation next year. That way it becomes codified, but that's just J.W. Hunter's personal viewpoint.
Derek, do you have any details on exactly what the differences were between Harrell and Bankson?
I can get that to you. I don't have it in front of me. Here's what I'll tell you that I was told. The Harrell bill was being done specifically for a vendor. And my understanding was it was Cynthia Henderson's client, and I'm not sure which client that is. And the House version was for the industry as a whole. And as kind of JW mentioned, providing the department with clear policies and things of that nature. The senator was very adamant that she was not amending her version regardless. The House got their bill over there with enough time, at least like a week before hers, so it could have been worked out. And the last discussion I had with DOT, and solely because I was trying to decide whether I need to move some language off of 981 and put it on 1031, the conversation we were having, I also had it with Rob Vickers, Senate Staff Director for Transportation, is that Senator Harrell had kind of made it known either she couldn't get her language on the House bill and them to accept it, then no bill was better than anything else. And so I was told flat out it was Cynthia Henderson's client. Allegedly, they're like 10 months behind the developer. And so they needed Harrell's language to pass to help out their business. If they couldn't get Harrell's language, then they would prefer no bill at all, which is why the assumption was Harrell was just dug in that she only wanted her bill and she would not even consider Bankson's version. There was a lot of infight. And the interesting thing is at the beginning of session, everyone was on the same page as far as all those who had clients in this space. They were working together. The recommendation from the work group, all that was in place, and that session progressed. It started parsing out, and then motives started being revealed. But that's the story behind why Harrell would not consider the House bill and why they ultimately chose the death for the bill versus passing the House version. But I can get you more information, Alan, and find out exactly what it was. But I know for a fact that that's what it was, why Harrell would not consider Bankson's bill. And the industry would have preferred the Bankson bill. And again, she was unwilling to even consider it.
She terms
But
out
Derek,
this year,
both-
doesn't she?
No, she's not. She actually has 2 more years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I
she has
thought
2
was
more
coming
years.
out.
She's in that
But both
2026
bills,
class.
Derek, opened it up. Originally, they were talking about just Orlando International. Both
Correct.
bills opened it up to additional airports, correct?
Correct. Yeah, Tampa Airport
Okay.
went to the governor's office because they were concerned about it only going to Goa, which is Orlando. So the governor's office got involved. I actually talked to Cody Farrell about this. Actually drafted up some language to allow Tampa to have a chance to be in as well. So you're right about that.
All right. Sorry to dominate the conversation,
No,
guys.
no, that's good.
All right, anybody got anything else? All right, well, like I said, we'll get the reports posted up on the website, and there will be a final one next week. Probably, I'm also writing an article for our magazine, so it'll probably be not just this list of bills, but something a little more meaty than that. So, but you can look for that next week, and if nobody has anything else, I appreciate everybody attending these each week. And like I said, we don't need another meeting next week. So Laura, if you could just cancel the rest of those.
Yes, sir.
Or the one for next week. And I appreciate everyone's attention.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Darren.
Alan.
Alan,
Thank you,
John,
guys.
good job. Appreciate it.
Woo-hoo. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
You as well.